Way back at the very dawn of Chinese civilization, surrounded by mist and legend, there stands this one colossal figure, the Yellow Emperor. He's known as the Great Ancestor, the ultimate cultural hero. I mean, he's the man they say laid the very groundwork for an entire nation. You've probably heard this phrase. It speaks to a shared bloodline, a really deep-rooted identity that stretches back thousands of years. It's what connects over 1 billion people today to these two legendary emperors, Yan and Huang.
But here's the thing. When you start to peel back the layers of that legend, the story of the Yellow Emperor gets way more complicated, a whole lot more brutal, and honestly, infinitely more interesting than the fairy tale version we think we know.
Okay, so first, let's just get the official story straight. You know, the epic tale that's been taught for centuries. This is the legend of a massive clash between these almost godlike forces, a battle that was going to decide the fate of the entire land. It's a really clean, heroic story, right? The wise Yellow Emperor teams up with his kinsman, the Yan Emperor, to take on this monstrous rebel, Chiyou. At the big showdown, the Battle of Zhuolu, Chiyou uses some kind of dark magic to whip up a crazy, dense fog. But the Yellow Emperor, being a genius, invents the south-pointing chariot, finds his way through the mist, crushes his enemy, and unites all the tribes. It's a perfect founding myth. But you know, history is rarely that simple. So the very first thread that starts to unravel this whole perfect story is the relationship between the two emperors themselves. Were they really allies from day one? Well, if you look at the ancient texts, they can't seem to make up their mind. And here is the problem. You've got the records of the Grand Historian from around 100 BCE, and it tells us the Yellow Emperor fought a nasty war against the Yan Emperor to become the top dog. But then, in even older text, the discourses of the states straight up says they were brothers. So what was it? A war between two rivals for power or a bitter family feud? This contradiction, right here, is our first big clue that the whole Noble Alliance story might just be a bit of political spin written way later. But the real key to unlocking this whole mystery might not be about who was fighting, but where they were fighting. See, the names of the battlefields themselves, Zhuolu and Banquan, they might have been hiding the truth right in front of us this whole time. For hundreds of years, everybody's just accepted that Zhuolu is a place, a specific spot in Hebei province. I mean, they've built monuments there. It's become sacred ground in the national story. But here's the question that just flips everything on its head. What if the ancient scribes weren't writing down a location? What if they were just trying to describe what the battle was actually like? The linguistic clue here is just fascinating. There's an ancient term, pronounced the exact same way, Zhuolu, that has nothing to do with a place. It means dripping wet or muddy. It describes a swamp. This suggests the battle wasn't fought at a place called Zhuolu. The battle itself was a Zhuolu, a muddy, rain-soaked nightmare. And once you see it that way, the entire story gets turned inside out. The muddy battle probably didn't happen in the dry north, but way down in the marshlands near modern Chuzhou, which just so happened to be Chiyou's home turf. And in this first battle, the Great Yellow Emperor didn't win. He lost. Badly. Chiyou used the crazy rain and all that mud to his advantage and completely overwhelms the emperor's army. You know, the legends say Chiyou summoned magical storms. The historical truth? He probably just knew how to fight in the monsoon season. The Yellow Emperor sent in his best troops, the Yinglong, or Eagle Dragon tribe, who were supposed to be masters of drainage and engineering. But even they couldn't fight a monsoon. They got bogged down, stuck in the mud, and defeated. Round 1 went to Chiyou. So the Yellow Emperor, beaten but definitely not broken, pulls off this absolutely brilliant strategic retreat. He draws Chiyou out of those swampy lowlands, luring him to a second, winner-take-all battlefield, a place history calls Banquan. And just like Zhuolu, the name Banquan seems to be another one of these linguistic ghosts. Over time, the name Banquan, which means sloped spring, was likely a misreading of Fanyuan. And Fanyuan means flat-topped plain. The Yellow Emperor retreated to a high, dry plateau. He got Chiyou out of the mud and onto open, solid ground, which completely took away his enemy's advantage. And on this new terrain, the Yellow Emperor finally won. So, the Yellow Emperor was victorious. He'd outsmarted his enemy, he'd secured his power. But what happened next? This reveals a man who was no gentle, benevolent sage. He was a ruthless leader, forged in an absolutely brutal age. For centuries, this part of the story was totally lost.
Then, in 1973, archaeologists unearthed a text called The Yellow Emperor's Four Classics, and it contained a really chilling account of what happened after the battle. It describes a cold, calculated, political act designed to cement absolute power. This was not some random act of savagery. It was a cold, pragmatic strategy. Step 1. You publicly dismember the rebel leader to send a terrifying message. Step 2. You reward your followers with pieces of his body as war trophies. And step 3, the darkest part, you enforce loyalty by forcing your allies to consume his remains in some kind of gruesome ritual. This is not a philosopher king. This is a warlord who understands the brutal mechanics of power.
So the big question is, how did that guy, this brutal warlord, become remembered as a wise and virtuous sage? How did this story change so completely? Well, the answer is that the legend was intentionally rebuilt piece by piece over hundreds and hundreds of years. What really happened were probably just a bunch of tribal wars over land and resources. Simple as that. Then, fast forward to the brutal Warring States period, and scholars start painting the Yellow Emperor as this master strategist, a role model for their warring kings. But then, during the unified Han dynasty, the historian Sima Qian needed a different kind of hero. He needed a founding father for a new, stable empire. So he edited the story. He smoothed over all the rough edges, and he recast the warlord as a benevolent sage. And that politically useful version is the one that's been passed down to today as a unifying symbol. So you see, what we call history is often just a story. It's a narrative with a purpose, molded by the needs of the generation that's telling it. The Yellow Emperor simply became whatever hero each era needed him to be. And that kind of leaves us with one final question, doesn't it? When we look back at our foundational myths, at these great ancestors, are we really seeing a true picture of the past? Or are we just seeing a reflection of ourselves and the heroes we wish we had?